I'll continue with our keyboard handling session. And so far, what do we have? We have our app when it loads up. It listens to the keyboard notifications, but it does not update our UI yet. So what we want to do now is when our keyboard comes on screen, we want to alter the constraints of our center Y on our pursuit logo such that it goes up, okay? That's what we want to achieve. So let's go ahead and do so in our view controller. So in our view controller, keyboard will show, gets activated here. I could remove this keyboard will show here. The keyboard will show. Keyboard will show, I could remove that print statement as well. Just keep this clean. And here for now, we will simply say, what's the name of our pursuit logo? Pursuit logo constraint here, and we'll say constant minus equal to keyboard frame dot size dot height. Okay. Okay. So let's test this to see what's happening here. I run my app, I click on the keyboard does go up, very good. Click on this keyboard, it will keep going up, okay. We have a problem, right? We have a problem there. We need somehow, it works, but it will keep working for different text fields, because each text field calls back the keyboard, and then we see what's happening. It increases that height, so we're partially there, but we're not exactly there yet. What we want to do is when the keyboard comes on screen, keep some like Boolean value of, hey, my keyboard is on screen, don't call it again. Don't call that function again, or don't do this again. If the keyboard is on screen, no longer are you altering my constraint. So let's do some refactoring. We'll copy that line of code here, and we'll write a function right below here. We'll say function move keyboard up, for example, and we'll paste this in here. Okay. Move keyboard up, we need some sort of height. So we'll say height equal to CG float. We want it to go up. If we want it to go up, we minus whatever the current value is. So if I'm 100 and minus 50, my constraints will go up.
Yeah. So why is it a minus, not a plus?
Because you want it to go up.
We're subtracting from 0, 0.
Yeah, exactly. So my constraint is 0. Well, it's actually 0. If I minus 0, if I minus 314 from 0, what do I get? Minus 314, correct? And in that case, what does the constraint do? Does it go up or down? It goes up, right? So everybody, let's go back here. Programmatic UI. If we want a view to go up, what do? Do we subtract or do we add? We subtract, right?
I get that, but I'm saying, our goal was to move the constraint, the height of
The Y.
Yeah, and the Y constraint, the height of the keyboard?
Yes, exactly. That's the goal. You could make it less, but
Oh, okay.
Oh, because you're moving that's big as the keyboard.
yes. So it's 300 points, we move it up 300 points.
You can borrow
You could do more calculations there based on that UI you're looking for, or that element you're looking for. Yes?
Wait, so because we moved the Y constraint on the logo, the text field moved up with it as well?
Exactly. Let's go back to our good question. Let's go back to our storyboard. So on our storyboard here, one's question was, hey, because we altered Y, the whole view moved up. Because everything, remember, auto layout works great when in those situations, right? Because one view is related to a next view. So if you alter one constraint, it alters everything in that hierarchy. So we could actually test it out here. Let's test it out now. Go to your storyboard, everybody, and let's test it out. So click on your Y constraint. Do we all have our Y constraint? Right, pursuit Y, do we see that? Okay, click on it. The constant is what? What's the constant? 0. So put in some negative value here. So I'll put in negative 50 and press enter. What happened? Everything moved up, right? Because at the end of the day, my stack view is related to the pursuit logo view, right? So if I alter that constraint, everything that's related to it relates to that constraint. Cool? Good question. So let's go back to 0 here, press enter, it centers again. Awesome. So let's go back to our view controller. In our view controller, we have a function, we called it move keyboard up. It takes in some height parameter, which is of type CGFloat. Great. And we'll call it right in our keyboard will show. In our keyboard will show, we'll call keyboard, not keyboard, move keyboard height up. And for the height, we'll pass in keyboard frame.size.height. We do not need this anymore. Just move those print statements here. We'll come back to it later. So code here, or to do, complete. Okay, so when our keyboard is on screen, we'll create some variable or some state to say, hey, it's on screen now. So we'll set some Boolean value to true. So if it's true, I do not want to alter my constraints anymore. Everybody? Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I will go up right below, right above our view load here. We'll create some private variable. What should we gonna call that? Keyboard is visible. What's a good default value here? False. So keyboard is visible, we set it to false. Keyboard is visible, we set it to false. Where is a good place to set it to true? Keyboard will show. So let's go to keyboard will show. So keyboard will show right here. We come in here, keyboard. We could do it here. So keyboard, thank you, Christian. So here we could say true here. Actually, let's do it inside of the let's do it inside of the keyboard move up problem here. Let's do it right here. Move keyboard up, we set it to true. Okay. And we want to protect ourselves here. Now, what's your question?
No, I get it. I get what
All right, cool. So right here we want to protect ourselves. We'll say if keyboard is visible, then just return. Line 57 says, if keyboard is visible, meaning it's on screen, just return. Do not change my constraints. Everybody sees that? Does everybody see that line of code here? Right? So that prevents it from doing our constraints multiple times. Any question? Okay. So let's go ahead and run our app again. And bring up the keyboard here. Try to bring up the keyboard again. It's not going to move my constraints anymore. Right? That took care of that. Perfect. Next step, we need to dismiss. Well, if it's a login screen, maybe you don't really want to dismiss it here, but we do want to dismiss it in our demo. In our demo, we want to take our view back down. Everybody with me? In our demo, we want to take our view back down. When I click the return key, for example, when we see gestures today, you could add a simple gesture on the view, like for example, a tap gesture. I could add a tap gesture on my view to dismiss the keyboard, right? In our case, I'll just go back to our delegate and I will implement, what method should we implement here for the return key? Text. Should return, right? So we'll set the delegate on our text fields and we'll implement text fields should return, and there we'll dismiss the keyboard. Okay, let's go ahead and do that before we do anything else. Let's go to our view.load right here and do user name text field dot delegate equal to self and password dot delegate equal to self. So here I'm setting my I'm setting my text fields as delegates here so that I could listen to text fields should return. And text fields should return is when the user clicks on the return key. Because right now, when the user clicks on the return key, nothing happens. So view.load, user text field delegate, and password text field delegate. And we'll go to the bottom and write an extension on our view controller that conforms to UI text field delegate and implements text field should return true. What's the one line of code we need to do here to dismiss the keyboard? So text field resign first responder. Thank you. Okay, cool.
But then we also,
No, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, no, but you just gonna say next.
What am I gonna say?
I'm just waiting for you to say it.
Yeah, exactly.
Then I was wrong, and then it's a good thing I didn't say that.
You guys are philosophers. All right, let's test our keyboard should return before we continue doing any more code. So run the app and put my keyboard up, click on my return key. Keyboard should now go away, right? Put my keyboard back up, right? So far, so good. Go ahead, what's the question? Yours is doing something weird. What's the weird thing it's doing? Did you, let's see, in your move keyboard up here, are you returning here if your keyboard, what is this? I want to refactor the name here. I don't know who wrote this in there. Keyboard, sorry. Yes, sir. Keyboard. Your logo clips like it goes up higher. You could create like some percentage on the height of the thing that you move it up. Instead of moving it up, say 100%, you could move it up 80% of the height. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So right here, where am I? Height here. Instead of making it the entire height, for example, I could probably give it some percentage here. Yeah, let's see. Something like this should do that. Cool? All right. So Ahad's question was, if you want to restrict the height, we have the height as being 100% of the keyboard, but you could decrease that height by some percentage. Cool? Very good. Okay, so moving on, our return key does work, but now when we click on the return key, we want to make our view come back down. Everybody with me? So when I click on the return key, I want to do a couple things. Actually, the couple things will be in a method. So let's write a function called reset UI. And reset UI, what does it do? It's going to say keyboard is visible back to false. Keyboard is visible back to false. But we have a next problem. Right now, our constraint changed. So we need a way to capture our constraint and keep the original value of the constraint. Okay? So let's go up and create a variable to keep the original value of this constraint. Because remember, we're changing that constraint, right? So let's actually write a function, not a function. We'll say var, yeah. What if the height was not the height? Like we just multiplied some other height here. But right now my height was not the actual height. You could set back to the height of the view. Let's see, we could do multiple things, but just keep in mind that you do change the height. Where are we here? Reset UI. Pursuit logo here. 0 is fine, just because we know it was 0, right? Is that, we know it was 0? Okay. But if it wasn't 0? Go ahead. We'll refactor this, but we'll just see what that gives us, okay? And we'll come back and refactor it. So reset UI will be called here. This sets the constant of the y back to 0. Originally it was 0. Tiffany? The y constraint was 0.
I'm just not understanding, if we subtracted, like I get we subtracted the height. I mean.
We subtracted the height, so if it was 0, it went up -3 or 1, whatever it is.
Right, and just adding that back, was that gonna work?
Add in what back?
The height, like we subtracted it, so adding it back wouldn't put it back in its position.
It could put it back in its position, but what if it's not exactly height of 3 or 4? What if we made a percentage height?
Oh, you mean, so, all right, so like if I had a height and I divided it by 2, like if I did, that it will increase by the height divided by 2.
If you keep track of that height somewhere, you could say go back to that height.
But are we going back to that height, or are we just?
We're going back to the original constraint. We want to reset the constraint where it was before.
Right, but if all we did was add to it, why is it subtracting from that?
We could take this number here and add that exact number. That's what you're saying?
That's what I mean.
But I want us to look at it in a different way. What if we keep the original value and just go back to the original value?
Okay, that's
Right? But some other people say, let's just use 0 for here, for example. Right? Let's see what that looks like. Make sure you call reset UI in your text should return. Make sure you call reset UI. Right? It's gonna go back to 0 because we know it was 0. Everybody with me? Keeping in mind that if I keep track of the thing I changed, like always try to, if you're changing some constant, some whatever, some constraint, keep hold of that original value. That's what I'm trying to get at. Keep hold of that original value. What is somewhere along the way, okay, here you said, I changed it back to, I made some height, some percentage height. What is somewhere else I changed it on a different height? Just keep track of the original value of the constraint, right? That way you have less bugs to deal with. So we'll just do that one step and then we'll add some animations, right? Because it's a bit jerky. Are we happy with this?
So in the keyboard will hide, we didn't do anything in.
Keyboard will hide here.
So what do we do there? If we already put it in the.
Right.
Design first response.
We could actually, yeah, that's a good point. So instead of like doing it on the return, we should probably just do that same reset. Instead of doing it on the return, do it on the.
Well, I'm not necessarily telling you to do.
No. Since we wrote it, we should just use it because maybe we don't use text field should return, right? Okay. So in case you don't use text field should return, bring up the questions, bring up the observations, guys.
Only because I was trying to move ahead a little bit
That's fine. We wrote the function, we use the function to reset the view, okay? And all what text field should return does, it dismisses the keyboard, okay? But in dismissing the keyboard, our notification should also call keyboard will hide. And then keyboard will hide resets the UI for the keyboard, okay? You observe something in lecture, just bring it up. We could experiment, we could test, we could refactor. And here, we are using it. Because as I said before, if it was coming from a tap gesture, you wouldn't have access to text field should return. Everybody with me? Okay. Okay, so we want to refactor this a little bit. We're pretty much done, but we have some more refactoring to do. So private var original y constraint, for example. Original y constraint, and here we will say this is also an NS layout constraint. So original y constraint, and when we actually call it here, keyboard will show, move keyboard up here. Right here, we could, in the move keyboard up, I could say original constraint equal to pursuit. Right before I change it, just save the value. So here we could just say save original value. At this point, we could do whatever we want with this because we have the original value. It's always saved.
Inside of the will show.
Inside of the move keyboard up on line 63. Yes, because it's coming from the CG rect, and the CG rect has each 4 values is a CG float. Okay.
Wait.
Yes. We're just saving the value here.
Why are we saving the value to move keyboard up and not when it reloads?
When it reloads, you mean in the reset value?
I mean, like when the view loads initially.
Oh, you mean in view reload? We could do that there.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. We could do it there. Yeah, that's fine. So next time, instead of hard coding this 0 here, we'll say plus equal to original y dot constant. Okay, let's test this.
Wait.
So why are we just setting to the original y constant?
Why are we resetting it to, I'm sorry?
Why aren't we just setting the...
Oh, you mean like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would actually be better, because, yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay, so I'm saying plus equal, that would add it on.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, we'll add this and then we'll add some animations. So add, that goes up, click on return. Sorry, here, what's happening here? What's our constant? Example, if my constant is minus 314 and I want it to go back to 0, I need to minus. I need to add 314. Okay, so if our constant is 314, it went up. We want to go back to 0. We need to add here. Let's see if that makes sense, right? So 314 is where the y is, right, everybody? Right? Y is at 314. I want to go back to 0. What do I need to do with my constant? Right? I'm sorry?
Goes up.
It goes up. Let's see.
If you remove the reset UI from the design versus market.
Let me test this and we'll go over it. Let me test this and we'll go over it. So that goes up, right? As intended. Click on return. click on return, it goes down. Let's just print the values so we could see why this is happening. Let's print the values, 1 second. In the move keyboard up here, let's print what the value of our constant is. So print original y constraint at constant. Print that value here, and we'll also print the value here. Okay? Okay, when it goes up, my value is 0. Goes down, my value is -2. Y constraint is 0. That's the original value.
He has a minus it again.
1 second. It works fine, but I just want us to see the values so we can have better understanding of what's happening. So right before I change it, let's see what the values are. One second. All right, that's better. So before we change the constant, let's see what it is. Am I running? Keyboard is up, my constant is 0. Keyboard is down, my constant is negative 240, right? So let's see what's happening. First, when the keyboard is up here, we said the constant, whatever the constant is, minus, so if the constant is 0, which it is, minus, what was it, 301, whatever 301, figure like, just put 301 here. So minus 301, that takes it up, correct? So the final value here is minus 301.
No, the height was 301, but you're multiplying it by 80, so is it by 0.80?
Yeah, whatever that value is, sorry. If we want to be exactly correct here.
No, I'm not going to say that.
240, right? So that becomes like 248, right? Is that what you said? 240.8. 240.8, right? And we want to take it back down now, here. We want to take it back down. So the original value is minus, right here we printed it out. The original value is minus 240.8, right? So the constant was minus 240.8.
So we have to minus.
We minus 240.8.
It's a double negative will be a positive.
Yep, so this is minus 2.8 minus 2.8 here, right? And that takes us back down to our original value. But keep in mind, this may look a bit more work here, but it could come in more useful because yes, we could say 0, or we could give it whatever we think we added up here. But what if you change the keyboard height or something else someplace else? Just try to keep an original value of it. That way you could deal with that original value. All right, one more thing before we end. I think we want to add some animations here because right now this is a bit jerky. NS layout constraint is a class. What's that?
So when you assign it at first, it's a reference type, right? Keep on changing when pursuit logos enter.
It's the same reference, yes.
Yeah. So and we were trying to use it as a value type instead, right?
Yes, like I was trying to copy that, and then that wasn't exactly working as intended. Okay? But now we want to end and just add in. Does everybody keyboard go up and down? I mean, not keyboard, their view. No. Yours does not? I'm getting a no, but. The reset, we remove the reset UI from the should return, and we have it in the keyboard will hide. What does the reset UI do? The reset UI is right here. It changes back to false. and it alters the constraint.
Mine says like finding your original Y constraint.
Yours says what?
Finding original Y constraint. So that whatever.
Original Y constraint is this.
Yeah.
Is that how you declared it?
Yeah.
And make sure you set it in our move up keyboard here. We set it here. Okay? Make sure you set it here. Other than that, it's going to be nil. Okay? And finally, we'll add, right when we do our constraint change, we'll add some animations right here. So UI view, I'm inside of my move keyboard up. I'll say UI view that animate with duration. I'll give it 1/3 of a second. And for animations, I'll say self.view layout if needed. I'm inside of the move keyboard up.
We give it like a little bounce.
Yeah, no bounce. We could give it a bounce if you want using the spring animation. But for here, we're just giving it some default animation so that it's not as jerky as this, right? So it's a bit smoother. But yes, you could give it options you want. You could make it curve in, ease in, ease out. But this is a bit smoother, right? As opposed to what we had earlier. And then we could increase the duration if we want. Make it 1/2 of a second. Let's see what that looks like. Right, that's a bit smoother here. And remember, if you change a constraint, layout if needed gets called. If you want to add animation to that constraint change, you basically wrap your layout if needed in a UI view animation block, and it will animate your constraint. So as you were saying, Tiffany, if you want to have a bounce here, you could say UI view dot animate spring. And here you could give it some time interval, 0.5, a delay of 0, a spring of say 3, initial velocity of say 10, options, animations, sim block. It would be UI view, layout if needed. And here we could make this say 1 second. And it will give it some bounce like you were asking for, if that's what you're going for. Right? Again, it's up to, we saw how much work, how much bandwidth we have with animations, right? We could go subtle, we could go really elaborate. It's up to us where we want to go with that animation there. The bottom doesn't have an animation yet, but the top has an animation. But feel free to experiment with the animations there. So we'll add an animation for the bottom as well. I'll keep this as a spring animation. And for the bottom animation, the resetting right here. For the resetting, we'll just keep it simple. We'll say UI view dot animate with duration. And again, we animate in self view dot layout if needed. Bounces up, doesn't bounce down. Okay, cool, great. I know we could make this pulse as well. How can we make this guy pulsate? This logo. Julia? Okay. Who could walk us through how to make this the logo animate, like pulse in and out? Repeat. Repeat is one of them, right? But let's go ahead and do it. What's that action? What are we trying to do to the view? Transform it, right? But what transform property are we using? Right, everybody? Have we been experimenting with animations? It's one of the things you have to experiment it in your own app. And then I think where the app requires us to have at least an animation there. So experimentation, guys. With that one, with animation, it's not just lecturing with the animations. We have to experiment with our own animations. The apps we use, like, hey, how does that animation work? And then add it to the app. So with we'll add one animation here and we'll stop. So right at my keyboard. Tanya, is there a place you wanted to see, or you good? Where am I going to put this? I'll put this animation right at the bottom here. I'll say private func pulsate logo. Okay. I'll say UI view dot animate UI view dot animate, and I'll say options. I don't want the spring. Animate options. I'm not gonna get it, am I? Animate options. I do not want spring. Okay, there we go. So UI animate with duration, delay, options, and animation. For the time interval, I'll say 0.3. Delay, no delay. Options. This is where, Tiffany, you were saying repeat, right?
Yeah.
So we could say repeat here in the options. We could also say auto reverse. Actually, let's keep repeat alone. And for the animations, what do we want to animate? Kelby?
The logo.
So the logo, and what am I saying on the logo? What property am I going for? Transform. Not translated mask. Transform. And it's a CG affine transform. And here, we have three types of transform. Yulia, write it down. We have three types of transform. We have rotation, if I want to rotate it at some angle. We have scale, if I want to make it shrink or grow. We have translation, if I want to move it from point A to point B. Right? Those are the three transformations we have. So we'll go after scale, if we want to scale it in and out. So for the scale, I'll say 1.2 for the X, and for the Y, I'll say 1.2 as well. Completion, don't think we do have anything here. Okay, let's see what we have. Actually, we gotta call it somewhere. We'll call it in view did appear. Oh, view did load is fine, because it just keeps going. So call it in the view did load. Call pulsate logo. In view did load. Yulia, how you doing here? You wrote your function? Okay. I'll go back to it. Pulsate logo. Christian, did you test it?
Yeah.
Okay. We have to practice animations in our own apps to get better used to them, because there's many things you could do with animations. You could slow it. Well, what do you have now? 1? Is it too fast?
Yes.
So what do you do? Half a second? Is 1 better?
Yeah.
Did we finish writing our pulsate logo? The what? Or the fast movement? Let's see what's happening there.
No, yeah.
Okay, there's something we could add. Anybody knows what I could add on this to make it smoother? It's a bit jerky, right? Yes, sir.
I guess we could animation doing the opposite right after.
Right, which is called auto reverse. So we could also pass in the auto reverse property here. So let's see, comma dot auto reverse. So it repeats, but it also auto reverses. Like it transitions back. This is smoother, right? Do we agree? Right? It won't give you a pulsating headache. Cool? The bounce, maybe we take out the bounce. The bounce is maybe too much. Um, what's what? All right. So we did keyboard handling today, and we did some bit of animation today, but the majority of the work was the keyboard handling. And at the end of the day, if you have keyboard handling in your application, it might be better to write some sort of extension, because you don't want to write this in every view controller, right? I will take this into an extension. Everybody with me, right? So I'll make an extension on the UI view controller to have that code. But basically what we started off talking about was, how do I register to get notified when the keyboard appears? The big class we need to get access to is Notification Center. Notification Center, or framework, sorry. Notification Center, the singleton here, has a function called add observer. Add observer takes in the following arguments: the object that is doing the observing, in our case, itself. A selector, what function should I call when this particular notification gets triggered? And the name of the notification you're listening to. In our case, we want to listen to keyboard will show notification, and notification center, think about it like a dispatch. Actually, let me not use dispatch there before you get confused. So think of notification center like a call center, right? It's a call center. You are listening to changes on particular objects. The object I'm listening to the changes on is the keyboard. So when the keyboard comes up, UI responder is in charge of everything. UI responder will know that the keyboard is on screen, and UI responder is always also the one that has the resign first responder, by the way. On UI responder, it has the resign first responder property. So it's big. It's a big class to really get your hands on there. Like if you want to really get into event handling and doing animations or anything like of that sort, UI responder is really big. So notification center, add ourselves as the observer. We have a selector, two selectors. One is keyboard will show, and one is keyboard will hide. Okay? We're not passing any arguments, but if you use notification center as your own custom way of passing objects, you could pass in some variable or argument. The same way we use delegation to pass in arguments, we could pass in notification center to pass in arguments or whatever data we want. But be careful if using notification center, because it could be an easy way to pass or to communicate, but debugging it or somebody else coming to your code base, it could be hard there. That's why you see delegation more in iOS as opposed to notification center. But notification center is coming again strong in SwiftUI and Combine and all that stuff there. Okay. And we also said, I had brought up the question, hey, if I leave in this view controller, how do I unregister myself? So if you leave in this view controller, you unregister the notifications you just added yourself to in our unregister for keyboard notifications function. And we call that in our view will disappear, right? When the view will disappear, that function gets called. When that view is no longer in memory, it gets called. And we register in our view did load right here, okay? Cool?
Wait, but does the view did load gets called if you will appear again?
If you push a view and you back, like you click on the back button and you go back to that view did load will get called again. But if you come in from the first view, in our case, ourselves, right, and you go forward and you come back, you would have to do it in view did appear.
Okay.
So this line of code would have to go back in view did appear. Does that make sense for your question?
View did appear, not view will appear.
View did appear is fine because it's not an animation you're doing, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Good question. What else did we do here? So we got the keyboard frame, which was the big part of it. And the keyboard frame, the big key we needed was UI keyboard frame, begin user info, and that has the actual size and origin of the keyboard. Okay, any questions about keyboard handling? And keep in mind, instead of doing it the way we did it with constraints, you could do a simple transform on your view. The same way we use transform everywhere with animations, you could say transform my view, give it some Y value to move it up. In that case, the Y value would be the keyboard's height, okay? And then on that animation, you could do on that transform, you could do an animation. But the big thing is you need to get the height of the keyboard. I've seen a lot of hard-coded numbers, but now you cannot hard-code numbers. Before you could have just hard-coded, what was the number? I can't remember. But there was one screen, one keyboard, so you could have hard-coded that number. You didn't have to do all that stuff. But now there's different screens, you cannot assume anything. So first get the keyboard height from the dictionary here. Get the keyboard height. Get the keyboard height here, so you know exactly what height you're dealing with. Okay? All right. We'll transition, we'll take a break. Thank you.